Well, I appreciate you coming out today to cover this, and I'm here for a number of reasons, but among them I appreciate the effort on the part of Arizona to lead on immigration legislation and enforcement in the United States. It's been a frustration to me. I've served on the Immigration Subcommittee here, the House Judiciary Committee, now into the 10th year. I served as 4 years as ranking member, and I put a lot of hours in hearings listening to the various testimony of the things that are wrong in America about our immigration law and the enforcement of our immigration law. I have been rooted in the rule of law and in the Constitution for ever since little on up. My father was in law enforcement, and he made sure I understood those principles. Also, the principles here of America. We're the most generous nation in the world for legal immigrants. And if you look at the numbers of jobs that have been created by the economy in the decade prior to the 2008 downward spiral, virtually every job created by the private sector, at least statistically, was taken by a legal immigrant. So that doesn't leave a lot of jobs left over for illegal immigrants. And when they are, it undermines the rule of law. And that is the central principle. But broader than this, I would like to state that we need to have an immigration policy that's designed to enhance the economic, the social, and the cultural well-being of the United States of America. That's what our immigration policy is about, and that's why the Constitution directs Congress to establish a uniform immigration policy. That doesn't mean that it's an exclusive policy that's set aside just for the federal government. And in fact, the 10th Amendment directs that any of those responsibilities are not enumerated and reserved to the federal government, are reserved for the states or the people respectively. And it's a well-established standard that we have a list of law enforcement at each level that complements each other. I mean, as a little boy growing up, I saw FBI agents and DCI agents and highway patrol people and deputy sheriffs and city police, all of them cooperating together, perhaps on the same incident, because they knew that together they were the team that held together the rule of law and the respect for the rule of law. And when this respect for the rule of law is eroded, it's willfully eroded by, let's say, cities that establish sanctuary policies where they prohibit their officers from even gathering evidence that might be useful in enforcing immigration law, and that the result of that is that they have circumvented a federal law that prohibits sanctuary cities, and so therefore they're encouraging implicitly illegal immigration. And whatever the economic equation is, whatever the social equation is, it necessarily, turning a blind eye to illegal immigration necessarily erodes the rule of law, the respect for the rule of law, and when that happens, it erodes America. And there are millions of people that come to this country legally and even presumably illegally because they want to come to a country that has the rights and the privileges that we have. Among them, a justice that is blind, a justice that is not of laws, not men. And so if they leave a country that is corrupt and come to the United States of America and it's being corrupted by people that turn a blind eye towards illegal immigration, then you've damaged the underpinnings of America and actually damaged one of the very reasons that people come here, especially legally. And so when I look at Arizona's law, and by the way, I'm one who has actually read SB 1070, and I appreciate the thought that went into it, the depth of thought that went into it. But it is about supporting American law from the very beginning, supporting federal law. From the very beginning, it was designed to mirror federal law, not to usurp it, not to go beyond it, but very carefully crafted to mirror and support federal law. And so there's a principle in there that I haven't read about in the press that I think should be considered, and I don't know that it's something that will be litigated before the Supreme Court tomorrow. And that's this principle that's called the careful balance. It's written in the case of Justice Department Eric Holder, where they state that Congress has entrusted the executive branch with the responsibility to establish and maintain a, quote, careful balance between the various interests of the federal government. That being the State Department, Homeland Security, Department of Defense, the Department of Commerce, for example, and there are various foreign relations. They would argue that somehow Congress has said, well, of all of these immigration laws that we have, why don't you adjust and maintain and fine-tune them so that they're right in sync with this careful balance? This careful balance is not something that Congress directed to happen. This careful balance is a manufacture of the Justice Department and probably the Obama White House. There's no careful balance that's been advanced by the United States Congress. There's no dialogue in the congressional record that talks about a careful balance. It's their rationalization for trying to shut down the support of immigration enforcement across this country. And it follows through with what appears to be the effort on the Justice Department and the Obama White House to establish administrative amnesty, that being they'll enforce the laws they want to enforce and ignore the laws they want to ignore. And you might well ask the questions on whether it's motivated for a reason that might have to do with politics. Those are your questions. I want to, in a moment, turn this over to Senator Pearce, but I will tell you that he is a friend. I'm proud to call him a friend. I've known him in his neighborhood and visited his office in the Tucson area and gotten to know the head and the heart of Russell Pearce. And I saw it today as he sat there in a lonely seat and facing the Senate Judiciary Committee chairman and also Senator Durbin, the only voice for the rule of law, the only voice of American patriotism and reason that was actually in that hearing room that day as I listened to it. And I know Russell Pearce well enough to have been very confident that all of those efforts with all of that staff were not going to crack a man that has solid beliefs, that believes in the rule of law and the Constitution, is dedicated to this country. I thought he had a stellar presentation before the committee, and I just told Russell Pearce, keep that tape. Your great-grandchildren will want to watch that sometime 100 years from now. So I'd turn this over to my friend and the author of SB 1070, Russell Pearce.
You know, I certainly have great appreciation for both Tom Penn of Judicial Watch and my good friend Steve King, who is truly a patriot. You know, he talks about the Constitution, and I love this country. I love what it's founded on. I'm a studier of the Founding Fathers. I understand the importance of this republic and how hard it is to keep it if we don't adhere to the rule of law. You know, but along with the Constitution, which I also always care, and actually I've read it, believe in it, I've read the founders, read the putting it together, those statements and documents and manuscripts that were published by our founders in terms of that great debate. But next to it, I also keep a little pocket book, SB 1070, which is a part of this Constitution about the rule of law and the importance of this sovereign nation. And with this one, I've signed it, and I want to give it to my good friend Congressman King. I want to tell you how grateful I am to have appeared today, and I know the numbers were a little on the other side. I'm okay with that. I am a great believer in the rule of law in defense of this simple bill. I kind of was interested today when they kept hounding on some of the AZ posts, Arizona Police Officer Standards Training, that puts together training for our law enforcement in Arizona. When they list a series of things that they understand cooperated with us to get on what you look for, just ask a question. I was really interested to know that this panel today was more concerned about an officer asking a question than they were about the fact that we give them guns and allow them to make life and death decisions. They were more concerned that actually some of that profiling might lead up to actually asking a question about where you live. I thought that was kind of more than interesting. It's been a long battle. Tomorrow we will go before the United States Supreme Court, and I predict a 5-3 decision, similar to what we got with employer sanctions last year. It's the same argument, preemption, the thing they throw out. And the Congressman said it well, the states have never, ever been preempted from enforcing immigration law. Had Congress wanted to preempt the states from enforcing that law, they could have used their plenary powers. That has never been done. The courts have sided with states and the historical constitutional police powers on this issue alone for the last 40 years. So I look forward to that. I look forward to those oral arguments tomorrow. I look forward to their decision that they'll render probably sometime in June. But I want to talk a little bit about just the effects. I'm not going to take a lot of time. A lot of what needs to be said has been said. But Arizona is a success story. You know, we've stood up and we've stood for the rule of law. Our citizens have a constitutional right to the expectation of the enforcement of our laws to be protected from those who break our laws. That's our duty. We take an oath of office, raise our arm to the square. Somewhere along the line, maybe folks ought to mean what they do. You know, I'm embarrassed. It was said today how somebody's embarrassed for the law. I'm embarrassed by those who ignore the damage to America. I'm embarrassed by those who think it's somehow unfair to enforce our laws. I'm embarrassed by the 12 Phoenix police officers who have been murdered and maimed by illegal aliens, the Buckeye police officer, my son who was critically wounded, Chris Miller. I can go down the list of folks who have been injured, maimed, and killed at the hands of illegal aliens. I don't know when enough is enough. Just simply the rule of law. SB 1070, all it did, and for as controversial as some would have you believe, removed the political handcuffs off of law enforcement, removed the illegal sanctuary policies that are across this nation coast to coast. Those policies that restrict or limit the enforcement of our immigration laws are illegal under federal law. 8 U.S.C. 1644 and 1373. So not only are states not preempted from enforcing the law, they're preempted from not enforcing the law. Just the opposite they would have you believe. Congress has set into place rules that say don't restrict law enforcement. They've always had that authority. And yet the left would have you believe somehow enforcing our law is something bad. I'm disappointed when those arguments are made and the public would believe those and the media reports it in a dishonest, inappropriate manner. I'm grateful to be here today. I want to take questions. I want to talk about the success. Very briefly, Phoenix Law Enforcement Association put out a press release in September of 2011 and made it clear. They have a 30-year low in crime. Unprecedented drop in crime. They attribute entirely to SB 1070. Not one complaint of police profiling or misconduct. Not one. A 30-year low in crime. Arizona benefits many other ways. Jobs for Americans. We've gone from 49th during the recession to Arizona now is number 6 in the nation in job growth and economic recovery because we're putting Americans back to work. When those folks leave that have taken illegal jobs from illegal employers, we were able to hire Americans and put them to work. So SB 1070 is a success and everything it was intended to do. We just as soon not have to arrest anybody. The reason we have laws is to get compliance. Laws that are not enforced are no laws at all. Because laws without consequences are not laws. So it's important that we honor and respect the integrity of our laws and the borders of our nation and the rights that our lawful, legal citizens and residents have.